Well, I can certainly tell that it is a holiday weekend by the makeup of this audience. We have visitors and we have a lot of people who are gone. But for those people who are gone, I suspect many of those are watching us live this morning, and we have a large audience of people, or a significant audience of people who watch us live every week or sometime during the day. So we welcome you, we thank you, and yes, I know it's a holiday weekend, and I hope everyone is relaxed, and I hope everyone is going to enjoy their day tomorrow. We call it Memorial Day. You may remember that in days gone by it was called Decoration Day, and it has its roots going all the way back to the Civil War. And people began to remember specifically those people who fought and died in combat. And so beginning in 1868, we started having this Decoration Day where we would remember people who had fallen in battle. And that continued to be held on the 30th day of May every year until 1970. Along the way it was changed and called Memorial Day. And it today is held on this last Monday of the month of May. And it's appropriate that we do have days where we may remember those people who gave their lives that we are free like we are today. You know that America has been in a lot of conflicts, a lot of wars. I guess the war that may be the most significant would be World War II, at least in terms of its magnitude. And again, as you well know, I'm not a historian, but I know that World War II was called World War because it involved almost every nation on the planet, and certainly the major superpowers. It began in 1939 and ended in 1945. Long war. America entered that war in 1941 with the bombing of Pearl Harbor, as you well know. And there were two major enemies, Japan and Germany. I think I read that worldwide, people who lost their lives would total maybe as many as 68 million people. And in America, if you take those who died in conflict, along with those who were wounded in battle, it's probably somewhere around 1.2 million of our soldiers. But in 1945, America and its allies became victorious. Now, I am sure that there have been many historians who have studied those battles, specific battles, and maybe they have the answers as to how we were able to be victorious along with our allies. I don't know the answer to all their questions they might think about. For example, was it that America had superior military machinery and equipment? I know we did invent a bomb that kind of brought it all to an end in a sudden way. Was it that we had greater military intelligence? Was it that our soldiers were braver and stronger and taller? Maybe the answer is all yes, I don't know. But I choose to believe that the reason why America was given, along with its allies, that great victory in World War II, because of the God that we have already prayed to and have sung about and that we speak about at this moment. For in that culture of that day, it seems that America was very in tune with turning its attention to God. And there is this verse that you may remember, this verse in 2 Chronicles, chapter 7 and verse 14 that Burke will put on the screen. And you can read that verse. But what it really says is, if the people who are called by my name will humble themselves and turn from their wickedness and seek me, I will heal their land. I will take care of them. And I want you to think about that. Think about all the mothers and fathers whose son went over there to fight, and how many prayers they offered over and over again. and the grandparents and the spouses, and in some cases, children. And then you work your way beyond those families. And you think about an entire nation that becomes frightened and begins to ask the question, what happens if we lose this war? What will this nation look like? Who will rule us? What will our government be if we lose this war? And people everywhere apparently were begging God that He would intervene and that He would give a victory, that He would get us out of all that. And so that brings us back, long introduction, I know, but it brings us back to the book of Romans in chapter 12. And I want you to look at this one verse in Romans chapter 12 and verse 12. Now, the good news about this lesson today is that I hope it's encouraging, that I hope it's easy. I hope it matches the laid-back spirit of a holiday weekend. For I know that next Sunday will likely not do that. We've been in hard material for the next few weeks in chapters 13 and 14. But I want you to think about this verse this morning. While it may be matching the holiday spirit, I will tell you that verse is not easy. And that verse bores into the heart of what it means to live as a Christian, a kingdom person. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. I don't know if Paul meant to put those all together because they're tied together, but in my mind, they kind of fit together. So I want you to pick up that one word in the center to begin with this morning, the word affliction. Affliction is that which causes distress and pain in this life, and difficulty and sorrow. And it would be good this morning if I could look out across this audience and if I could even look beyond through that camera up there and see everyone who's listening and could really know that no one is suffering affliction. But that's not realistic. Because affliction always comes. It comes more often than we want. It stays longer than we want. And it hurts more than we want it to hurt. That's the way affliction works. And maybe it's not the affliction that we noted in World War II. And hopefully for none of the audience that we're speaking to this morning, it would be like what's happened at Uvalde. Can you imagine? That little tiny community in the absolute heartland of Texas, the most fertile agricultural part of the world. It's so easily growing this massive produce. And a deranged young man kills 19 children. 2 children, 2 teachers, after having shot his grandmother. Can you imagine the distress, the pain, the sorrow of that entire community and specifically those who were directly affected by it? But there are other afflictions. I prayed about the economy a while ago. Gasoline prices that are over $4 a gallon. If you're driving one of those diesel machines, it's over $5 a gallon. And what if you're on a fixed income? How do you navigate the grocery store after going to the gasoline station? How do you navigate? Sometimes I don't feel all that so directly, and I forget about all the pain and suffering that's caused. And then there are relationship problems that we have, and you know all those things that cause affliction. And Paul says, I want you to be a patient person. During this time of sorrow and pain and Does that make sense to anybody? Does it really make sense to any of us that we're called upon to be patient, we're called upon to hang on, we're called upon to exist in all this? I'm telling you, that affliction thing comes more often than I want. It lasts longer than I want. It hurts more than I want. And Paul says, when you enter the kingdom, I want you to be different. I want you to be patient in your affliction. It gets harder. You back up to the first thing. He says, be joyful in hope. Now, I love the word hope. We often say, I hear other people saying it, you just can't live without hope. You've got to believe that things are going to get better, and you've got to look forward to things getting better, even when you're in that affliction. And we are called upon to not only possess hope, but to smile along the way. That's what joy means, to smile, to be happy. Isn't that interesting? How in the world? I mean, Jack and Karen could tell us. Battling health issues like a cancer and taking treatments for that. It's called affliction. And to be patient during it and smile along the way, to be joyful in the hope. And we talk about people in the nursing home and we think about that situation, and it never ends, does it? So how in this new life, in this new kingdom into which we have been born, how do I be joyful in hope and patient in this affliction type thing? How do I do that? Well, I want you to look at that last statement. Faithful in prayer. Faithful in prayer. And I know what some of you are thinking. And I know it's not maybe good for me to say something like this. But I'm going to tell you something. There are times when it comes too often, this thing of affliction, and it hurts too much, and it stays around too long, I don't feel like praying. Does that shock you? But the good news in the kingdom is that the Spirit of God is speaking for me. It's pouring out my feelings and my distress and my hurt. And Jesus is talking to the Father, as we have already found out in the book of Romans. And I want to tell you something that I've done differently in the last, let's call it, couple of months. I've been trying to pray differently. Because what I noticed was I would spend time in my prayers praising God and talking about who He is. That He is the Creator. That He did part the waters of a sea. Do you believe that? Do you believe He parted the waters of a sea? He wants to hear it, I think. Do you think He tucked someone away in the belly of a giant fish and left him there for 3 days and brought him out alive? Do you believe that? I think He wants to hear us say that we believe it. I think we ought to spend time in prayer. I think we ought to spend time in thanksgiving. Oh, I have been enormously blessed. And so have you. But I noticed I spend a lot of time in request. And my requests usually sound like this: will you fix it? Will you fix it? You know, that's what we did when we were little bitty with our parents. We'd take it being broken and say, will you fix it? Will you fix it? But I started thinking about maybe that's not exactly what I should be doing. It's just say, fix it, fix it, fix it. Fix Russia. Fix the Ukraine. Fix the economy. Fix whatever. I started thinking maybe I'm the one that needs to be fixed first. Maybe I'm the one that needs to be fixed first. Yes, I still pray that He'll fix all these things and help all these things, but I've been praying lately, maybe there's something for me to learn. And maybe you're not going to bring this to a solution until I learn what I'm supposed to learn as your child, trusting you. And here I am back to that old subject. I never get away from that subject, do I? That part of the heart of kingdom people is a heart of trust. That I am confident that with Him, really, all things are possible. And we go to our grave, even if it's a grave approach that's suffering with affliction. We go to our grave trusting the things that He has taught and said. And maybe the prayer is, yes, I would like for the burden to be lifted. I'd like for it to go away. But I want to learn what you need for me to learn. I need to be refined. You know how much the Scripture talks about that? That we're refined through fire, that we're built through tribulation, that we're being molded and shaped along the way. And if I just bail out too easy and I just kind of want to run away from it, maybe I'm not learning it. And so it's a faithfulness in prayer that, God, you're in control, and I don't like how this feels, and I want it to be fixed, but I want to be what you've called me to be. And I'm beginning to think maybe that's the secret for me to be able to hang on when times are so difficult. And maybe that's a secret for me to be able not just to hang on, but to smile and have joy. Now, I'm not talking about in a moment of intense pain to smile. I'm not that, I don't think like that. But in general, that we have this hopeful spirit, and we have this spirit that smiles. And we have a spirit that therefore is attractive. It is so easy for me, maybe not for you, but I'm going to tell you, it's so easy for me to get so negative and so down that I'm just a total grouch even to God. I mean, everywhere I go, I frown and I may be saying too much this morning. Maybe I'm talking too much. I'm just telling you, as kingdom people, we've been born into a new kingdom. And it's a different, unusual, changed, strange, peculiar life. And it's different from that world. So may I request this morning that we be patient in affliction, and we be joyful in hope in the midst of that affliction and at all other times. And maybe be people who are faithful in prayer. And I got great news for you. That whole statement would be totally meaningless were it not for Jesus Christ coming to this earth. If it weren't for Jesus being so intent that we live like that, He was willing to die for it. Had He not come, we wouldn't be talking like this. It would make literally no sense. It only makes sense to kingdom people. But it's because of Jesus, our King, our Master, our example, and the one who is a fallen soldier. Do you realize that? Memorial Day is about fallen soldiers, people who literally died in conflict. He died in conflict. He fought the enemy of all enemies, Satan. And Satan thought for a moment he won. But just a little bit later, here he is alive, smiling and saying, Satan didn't win anything. I just beat him now and forever. And so isn't it appropriate that the one who put us in a new kingdom of joy and hope and ability to endure tribulation and people who continue to look to God in trust so that we pray to Him, Isn't it appropriate that we remember the ultimate fallen soldier, Jesus Christ?